Well, perhaps you feel like you've suffered through learning all this stuff about the technology behind drilling and completing a well, or maybe you've really enjoyed learning all these things. I hope it's the latter. But like I said, you may have questioned, is this really a business class? Because I thought we were going to learn about the business of oil and gas. And so let's get back into the side of the business of oil and gas and looking at how much it costs to do these things. We're going to look through several AFEs. Remember, that stands for authorization for expenditure, and it's very simply a budget sheet for drilling and completing a well. I'm going to take you through several examples because they can teach us different things. The first AFE I have called up is for a mythical well, in that Mr. Henderson just put this together to say, what would a representative 5,000 foot deep well drilled in and around Wichita Falls cost? What I'd like you to do is take this AFE out and then stop this video and take a look over it and see what are the major cost drivers in drilling and completing the well. Okay, let's get started on how you break down an AFE. The first is why these two different columns, intangible versus tangible. Intangible means theoretically there's no salvage value to that activity. And from a business perspective, very importantly, that allows the business to fully deduct the expense this year. So this is a way to minimize the amount of taxes that are paid. And all it does is accelerate the depreciation or the deduction, not depreciation, the deduction. It doesn't increase it. So those people would say, wow, the oil and gas industry is heavily subsidized by these tax breaks. Well, okay, you can make that case, but keep in mind, it's not a tax reduction. It's simply delaying by a year or two the amount of money that would have to be spent anyway. And so that's why you see the intangible versus the tangible. What you see here in theory are things that have salvage value. So this should be largely equipment. I hope you notice that the primary driver of costs is the rig itself. Not too much actually in this rig. Here they show two different ways to pay for rigs. You see 2 days at $8,500 a day. I would assume those are the days that they're paying for the rig to be transported and set up and then moved off the drill site. The next is that they're paying per foot, $16 per foot. Notice that what that sums to is $97,000 for the drilling rig, or about 20% of the total cost of this well. There are other ways to pay for drilling rigs, and we'll see that in other examples. Notice there's no directional drilling expense because this is a quote-unquote straightforward vertical well. Scrolling down to the bottom of this particular chart, you see something called total dry hole cost. So in theory, the way this AFE is broken out is it first tells you how much is it going to cost to drill this well. And the answer is a little over $200,000. And at that point, you find out whether you have an economic level of minerals to actually go ahead and produce. In wells like vertical well drilled around Wichita, Archer, Clay counties, you don't know that you're going to be able to find oil that's going to be worth producing. So there's always that question. It's a little bit different in the resource plays where they're drilling into the shale, where they know exactly, I shouldn't say exactly, they know largely what they're drilling into, and there's not really a way even to test whether the well is going to be any good before you frack it. But here, this is the dry hole cost. Okay, we drilled the well. The drill tests don't look good, or I'm sorry, the well tests don't look good. We're not going to complete the well. We're just going to plug it. And so that would be a $200,000 expense. This well is kind of notable to me that there's lots of, I'll call them large expenses. There's $10,000 to get the site, $7,000 to prepare the site, another $5,000 to prepare the site. Nothing really jumps up as a huge expense other than the cost of the rig. Open hole logging, this is a fairly big amount, and you can see P&A is plugging and abandonment cementing. So that's what if the well really was dry. Let's go on to the next page, and this is going to get into the completion costs. Here you're going to see a lot more tangible costs. Here are some of the processes to frack the well. Yes, you still frack vertical wells often, but it's not nearly as expensive. When you get down toward the bottom is where you start to see the significant expenses, and that is in the casing. So the metal that you put down into the well to case it and then to install the tubing, you can see is another major expense. Um, and so your primary costs here are the acid frac treatment, where they're paying a service company to come out and do that job, and then the setting the tubing and the casing. And because you have to set casing, you still do have a little bit of a drilling rig involved and a workover rig, and you see those are the other major costs. And so what do we end up with the grand total? Well, now that we've prepared the well, we have to put equipment on the well. So pumping unit, um, pier, or a nodding donkey or a pump jack, whatever you want to call it. The tanks, some of the other associated equipment. You come up with what's sitting up on the surface alone is worth, or working from the surface too, is worth $100,000. And what you get to is that your basic well in the surrounding counties of Wichita Falls, drilled to a 5,000-foot depth, is about $500,000. Okay, good to know. We're about to look at some wells that cost significantly more than that. The next well we'll look at is called the Good, and this is got this from a company called Eagle Oil and Gas here in town who participate in it. This is a well in East Texas. It is a gas well, and you can see even says that it's a Lower Cotton Valley gas well. Here's how you read the distances. They're going to drill down 12,000 feet, turn the bit, and then drill a 7,500 foot lateral. So this is a horizontal well, 12,000 feet down with a 7,500 foot lateral. In this case, they don't break out the tangible versus intangible. They do it simply on a drilling and a completion cost. Again, the trends that you're going to see are very similar to what we saw in the other well. Looking at the high-priced items, well, it's the steel in the well, the surface casing, the intermediate casing, and then the production casing. And then you'll see later into the tubing is where a lot of money is spent. And so this is how today we're hearing a lot of discussion about import tariffs on steel and the like. You can see that has a pretty significant impact on costs in the oil and gas industry. Because this is a gas well, they don't have a lot of as much surface equipment. Specifically, they don't have a pump jack. They have other surface equipment such as a dehydrator and an amine unit that they have to install. What I want to show you is the difference in the cost of the drilling rig. And so I'm struggling to look here to find it. They choose to, again, to pay by the day, and they estimate it's going to take 44 days to drill the well, and that rig is going to cost $18,500 a day. I don't know what the daily rate would be on the well, I'm sorry, on the drilling rig in the Archer County. Remember, they paid $8,500 a day, I think, for the setup and the teardown. So probably they're paying $8,500 to $10,000 a day. You can see this rig is almost twice the price, and that's because it has the capability to drill deeper. So once again, the drilling rig is a major component of the price, and you can see, whereas the other well probably took 5 or 6 days to drill, this is going to take 44 days to drill. So a lot more expense into the drilling rig. And then you see in the other major expense, 44 days. So notice it matches that day at $10,000 a day. So not only are they paying $18,500 for the rig, there is a directional drilling crew and tools that are on site. They're paying $10,000 a day. So in essence, they're paying close to $30,000 a day for 44 days to drill this. The directional drilling are the people who monitor or provide and monitor the tools that are needed to do the sophisticated placement of the bit, to get it to do the turn, and then to remain in the shale. So once again, drilling rig is a major cost as well. The other major cost that you see is over here in the frac treatment. And you can see it says that they're going to do 30 frac stages. each 250 feet long. And so I haven't done the math, but I think that adds up to 7,500 feet. And they're giving you some specifications, but that's going to cost $2.4 million. And they're paying a company to do that, and that's their price. And there are also some other associated charges with that, such as you can see the water and the water lines. They're paying $150,000 for the water. The drilling bits are, I'm trying to find the drilling bits here. The drilling bits themselves are pretty expensive. 10 bits, a total of $176,000. So you can look through and you can see all the various expenses, but what you're going to find, the three major components are the rig, to include the directional drilling rig, the steel that goes into the casing, and then the frac. Those are the three major cost drivers. And as we scroll down, we see that it's $3.7 million to drill the well, and then, oddly enough, $3.7 million to complete the well. And this is some casing and some rig work and a whole lot of frac money driving that. So in total, that well cost $7.5 million. So pretty significant difference. You can see as the rig sophistication goes up, it gets more expensive, and the number of days you need that rig go up as you start to drill horizontal wells, and frac is expensive. Let's take a look at another gas well out in East Texas. This is the one that Cobra Oil and Gas is developing. You can see their AFE is a little bit different. They talk about before casing point and after casing point. You could say that's to drill and then complete the well. They don't break out the tangible, the intangible. The picture's the same, but I wanted to show you a couple of differences. First of all, this difference is, let's see, this is 17,000 foot well, very deep well, and it's a vertical well, so it's going down 5,000 feet further than the gas well that we studied previously, or we just talked about previously. What's interesting is notice they're contracting 90 days versus 44. So what that tells you is those extra 5,000 feet are going to take a lot of time in the drilling rig to get down that far, and they're paying $25,000 a day for the rig. They don't break out any directional tools and directional charges. So, and again, even though it's not a horizontal well, sometimes you need a directional crew just to help keep it straight. But the thing I wanted you to see is to drill the well, $9.6 million. To complete the well, another $2.3 million, and this is a $12 million well. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Let's take one more look at an AFE, and that's going to be for one in the Permian Basin. The final well that we're going to look at is one that's being drilled out in the Permian Basin. Specifically, probably it's in the Delaware because it's in Lee County, New Mexico. And we can see that it's 12,000 foot deep with a total measured depth of 22,000 feet. So this lateral is on the order of 9 to 10,000 feet, or a little bit longer than the gas well we looked at for Eagle Oil and Gas. Here, what I want you to see is 35 days on the drilling rig, 3 days to complete at 21,500 a day. So this rig is more expensive than the rig that Eagle was using to drill its horizontal well in the Cotton Valley in East Texas. That's simply supply and demand. In terms of capability, this rig probably isn't any different than the one that Eagle's using. It's just because it's in the Permian, it can be priced up. And really beyond that, that's the main thing I wanted you to see. You can see here for the fracking, they're estimating 61 stages, 24.7 million gallons of water, and a frac cost of $2.9 million. And there's some other things, other charges that are probably associated with the frac. But again, the main thing is the huge expenses are the rig. And notice this is pretty astounding. For the fuel, they're estimating $500,000 for the fuel. Well, that's to go out and keep all those frac trucks fueled up while they're producing. Again, I assume this is to drill the well and this is to complete the well. And then you can see water charges, $765,000. So even though you're like, well, gee, that frac charge isn't a lot more than the one we looked at in the on the gas well in East Texas, you can see that they just have some of the fracking charges broken out a little more completely. So how much does this well cost in total? 10.7 million. And so this is for a well that they hope would make close to 1 million barrels of oil, probably 800 to 900,000 barrels of oil is what they're hoping for from a well. And you can see it's going to need to make that much oil to justify that cost. So to sum up, I hope that you see that everything that you've learned is now starting to come together, and that you understand what these things are talking about on the screen about what it takes to drill and complete the well. And now you have an appreciation for where the cost drivers are. And those are the main things I want you to get out of looking at the AFEs.